Hi, welcome to Yarning with Angela. My name is Angela. Normally, my videos are craft related, usually knitting, crochet, that kind of stuff, diamond painting, and some cooking videos. But today I want to talk to you about a condition called Chiari Malformation. So Chiari, there are several different classifications of it, and I have Chiari Malformation type 1. So what is Chiari? Well, Chiari is a herniation of the cerebellar tonsils, which is the part of your brain that connects to the brainstem that comes down into the vertebrae. If I had fancy editing, I would put in a picture here, but I don't. It's very difficult to find a specialist for Chiari because it is not a technical specialty. But there are very few specialists in the United States that specialize in Chiari. Probably about 10 actual specialists. Now there are neurosurgeons that do treat Chiari, but very few have actually devoted their life's work to Chiari and to researching it and to bettering the lives of those of us with Chiari. So what does Chiari do? Well, Chiari does a lot of things. Chiari, because of the herniation, it will block the flow of cerebral spinal fluid from your brain to your spine. And so that is the cushion. That is what protects your brain and what protects your spine. And so if that is blocked, your brain will keep producing the spinal fluid, and it can create like a pressure in your brain, or what's called intracranial hypertension. It can also cause what are called syrinx, which are cysts to develop in your spine, and those can lead to paralysis, loss of bowel and bladder function, and many other things along with that. It can cause weakness and numbness of limbs. It can cause breathing problems and heart problems when the vagus nerve is compressed. It can cause swallowing issues and choking. All kinds of things. There are many comorbidities of Chiari. And so when I say comorbidities, there are common ailments which are frequently found in people that have Chiari. And so I'm not a doctor, and so I can only speak of my personal experience and my personal knowledge. However, I recommend that if you are interested in Chiari malformation or any of the information that I provide, or you want to learn more about it, then please look into the Bobby Jones Foundation. They have a channel on YouTube with a lot of information. So I was diagnosed about 2 years ago with Chiari after some episodes which presented in like stroke-like events. And so I would lose the use of my left side and the ability to speak. I would have confusion, temporary blindness, extremely high blood pressure. I would lose words, like where I couldn't find the word or where my words didn't make sense. And I still experience these from time to time. I've experienced some things that are very similar to almost like seizures, sleep paralysis, passing out, blacking out, loss of balance, falling, things like that. So one of the things that can make these symptoms worse is bearing down. And so a lot of women with childbirth will have issues, and so there's that to consider. Bowel movements can cause problems because when you bear down, it creates a a pressure in your brain, and so I have passed out with that, or lost sensation in my limbs, things like that. So some of the other symptoms are severe headaches, and there's many different kinds of headaches. And these are not your headaches like stress headaches or tension headaches. These are debilitating, mind-numbing headaches that completely take over everything in you. They can be sudden, they can be slow, they can be long-term, they can be quick. There's no way of knowing when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. Weather changes are a big problem. When the weather is changing, I can tell it better than, like, I don't even look at the Weather Channel. I will notice that my words are getting funky, and I have what I call brain fog. Many of us will call it brain fog, and when you experience it, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about if you ever do. Everything just seems kind of shady and kind of difficult, and like, like everything is kind of sluggish and in slow motion, and things don't make sense that should make sense, and you just can't put two and two together. You know the answer is 4, but you just can't, like things that you do regularly just don't, and it's very scary. How is it diagnosed? It's diagnosed through an MRI. Unfortunately, not a lot of doctors are very familiar with Chiari, and so a lot of the times it is underdiagnosed. And so that brings me to, is it a rare condition? Well, it's classified as rare, but is it really rare? I don't know. I don't think it is. First of all, it has a higher rate than MS. Yep. More people are diagnosed with Chiari Malformation than with muscular sclerosis, but it does not have the funding. So I have lots of opinions on the whys and what fors of that. However, I don't think you want to hear me I'll go off on that tangent. The comorbidities that I was talking about. So what kind of comorbidities come with Chiari? Many people with Chiari are also going to have syrinx, as I mentioned. There also is a high number of people that have what is called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS, is a group of connective tissue disorders. Most people that know about EDS will think about it like Marfan's syndrome and things like that. People that are hyper flexible. So that is not it. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome has many different forms. Some of those forms attack your organs, your blood vessels. People can be hypomobile. They can have a lot of sprains. They can have weak joints. And so some people, like, you think of people that are like lanky and skinny and they're like bending their arms back and doing all this stuff. Those are not the only people with EDS. And so a lot of EDS gets missed as well. And so the hypermobile, many doctors can diagnose that. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But for the other EDS, that you do need to go through a geneticist. I am currently going through that process to be diagnosed, to see whether or not I have it, because I have some issues with some blood vessels and some other organs that are presenting where it's a possibility. Why is it important to know if you have EDS? Well, it makes a difference in surgery. So if you have a connective tissue disorder and they go and open up your skull and your dura, if your dura is, because it's a connective tissue, if you have EDS, that can cause you to be at a higher risk for what we call CSF leaks, or cerebrospinal fluid leaks. And those can happen spontaneously, or they can happen post-surgery or post a lumbar puncture, post-trauma, things like that. And so if you have a connective tissue disorder and you're having surgery where you're weakening that, that can be a big thing, and it can cause what's called brain slumping. And so there's many other things, but it's important that that your doctor look into the EDS component before you're operated on it. And many neurosurgeons who do Chiari surgeries do not take into consideration all the comorbidities when they operate, and this is where a lot of people have botched surgeries and end up with major complications, and then have to have revisions multiple times, and sometimes they're never able to be fixed. They're permanently handicapped because they went to the closest doctor, and the doctor, or a doctor that they thought was a specialist that wasn't. There's many different reasons why people can have complications. It is a risky surgery. It is not an easy decision to make on whether or not to have surgery. It's not something to be taken lightly. Some other things that are highly common with Chiari. Many people with Chiari have MS. Many people with Chiari are misdiagnosed as having MS when they don't have it, or they do have MS and, with the Chiari. But because a lot of our symptoms are very similar to MS, lupus, a lot of people with Chiari will also have lupus. Intracranial hypertension. So it is also referred to as pseudotumor cerebri. Pseudotumor cerebri, your body thinks that your brain has a tumor, and so it treats your body like you have a brain tumor. You have the symptoms of a brain tumor without a brain tumor. And so in order to protect your brain creates more spinal fluid, which increases the pressure, and it's just a circle. And so many people will also have that. Sometimes it is because of the Chiari, and sometimes the Chiari is caused by the intracranial hypertension, because the pressure in the brain will cause it to herniate and plug that hole. If it's the right shape, it'll just plug it like a cork in a bottle. I have both. No fun. Unfortunately, the treatment for intracranial hypertension, the temporary fix is a lumbar punctures. It is very dangerous for people with Chiari to have those lumbar punctures if they're not done properly. And so it's very important that if you have Chiari and you have to have a lumbar puncture, that the person that is performing your lumbar puncture is doing it properly and well aware. And so again, I'm not a doctor, and so I don't want to play one on YouTube, but just make sure that that's being done properly, and not like when they draw it, that they're letting gravity pull the spinal fluid instead of them actually drawing it out, because that can further herniate you as well. Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, are quite common with Chiari, and it could be because of the Ehlers-Danlos or the EDS, but a lot of autoimmune disorders and are common with Chiari. Fibromyalgia is quite common with Chiari. Central sleep apnea is quite common with Chiari. It's not the obstructive sleep apnea, which I think obstructive may be common with it too, but central is definitely common with Chiari. Swallowing issues, like I said before, is quite common. There are hundreds of comorbidities. Mast cell activation syndrome, or MCAS, is another common one. And so MCAS, your mast cells in your body will start producing histamines for no known reason. So you may be allergic to something one day and not allergic to it the next. You may not be allergic to it one day and then all of a sudden you're allergic to it. You may have weird rashes, weird breathing issues, all kinds of weird reactions, and no way of knowing, like, wow, what the heck? So that's a pretty big one. A lot of spine issues. Tethered cord. Tethered cord is where the bottom of your spinal cord, it adheres to the inside of your spine. So it's supposed to be free flowing, right? And so it'll get stuck. It'll adhere to the dura of your spine, to the inside, and so it will pull, and so it pulls down, which then pulls down your brain, pulls on your brainstem, and so that can be very serious. And so doctors need to address whether or not you have tethered cord before they do a decompression, because you might need to have the tethered cord addressed before you have the Chiari addressed. So heart conditions, POTS, or positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Tachycardia, I know I screwed up all those words. POTS and dysautonomia are quite common with Chiari. So maybe when you stand up, your blood pressure will bottom out and you pass out, or the other way. You stand up and your blood pressure goes through the roof. These are all autonomic issues that can come with Chiari. POTS is, like when you lay down or sit up and things change, and they test that with a tilt table. And so you might need more electrolytes. There are different infusions that people will need based on these. And so there's a ton of other comorbidities. But what I want to impress upon you is that there is no part of my body, no part of my life is not impacted by Chiari. I struggle to live life without Chiari taking over, but it is a priority. Like I am not Chiari. Chiari is not me. I have Chiari, but I'm not Chiari. And so many of us feel ostracized by family and friends because not every day are we able to do things. You might see somebody out and about on Monday and they might be perfectly fine. They might be out swimming, jogging, whatever. And then Tuesday, you're like, they call you and they want to cancel the plans because they're laying in bed. And you're like, well, are you lazy? No, they're not. They might have gotten up and could not stand up. It could be any number of things. It interrupts socializing, it interrupts work, it interrupts family life, it interrupts everything. And it's not that they don't want to be around you. They might even be physically okay, but they might be mentally overwhelmed. It could be sound. Sound can cause issues, bright lights. I love going to church. I adore going to church. However, Christmas, my family, my parents, my brother and his wife, we all went to a rather large church in my town, and I don't know if you've been to like a mega church, but a lot of the times it's a lot like a rock concert when they're playing music. There's a loud bass drum, there's lights, there's a fog machine, and so I got very sick. And it wasn't something that I could just close my eyes to, and I could not leave because there was stairs, so I was stuck there. I was trapped because the stairs, it was already happening. And so I already was experiencing extreme vertigo and I could not leave. And so I had to sit through it, absolutely miserable, and it made me physically ill. For a few days, I was very ill after that. And that is, it's not that I don't want to go to church. I just can't experience that, that I just can't. It affects your hormones. Many people with Chiari also have PCOS. I have PCOS. People will also have what's called empty cella syndrome. I do not have that. However, inside, like in the center of your brain, there is like an open area, and that can be empty or it can be condensed and compressed. These are all things that that have to be considered and have to be checked into. So if somebody has Chiari, they don't just have one doctor for their Chiari. It's a team of doctors, and it's important to find doctors that work together. So I have my neurosurgeon is about 3.5 hours from me, and as far as that sounds, it is very close relation when you think about how large the United States is and the fact that there are only about 8 specialists. So to have one in my state is incredibly fortunate for me, because that is not always the case, and people have to travel for 12 hours to get to a specialist in some cases. I have a cardiologist, but he is not familiar with the Chiari aspect of my heart conditions. So even though he had given me a pass on a heart cath, I now have to go to a cardiologist who works very closely with my neurosurgeon, and has almost taken Chiari as like a side specialty, because there are so many patients of my neurosurgeon that go to him. And so, so he's going to understand the extra added stuff. I have a geneticist that I am seeing, and I had an endocrinologist. My primary care physician has actually taken on a lot of my endocrinology issues, just because he's incredible. He's old school, and he takes care of about everything, and he researches, and he listens. One of his nurse practitioners, her mother actually was recently diagnosed with Chiari, and so I feel like that is also helping, because they understand it a little bit more. I have an issue. Many of us will have issues with, especially with EDS, with like colon tears and things like that, or with polyps. Well, I don't think the polyps is necessarily because of it, but like Crohn's disease and things like that, and irritable bowel. And so a lot of the times we will need a gastroenterologist that is familiar, and because we are prone to, with EDS, we are prone to like tears and stuff like that, then they need to be familiar with, with that aspect of it. My sleep doctor, I have to have a specialist for my apnea. Like, this is like every single part of my body is impacted by this. And so then comes into scheduling appointments, because when you have an annual appointment with your neurosurgeon, then leading up to that, you have to have your annual MRI, you have to have, all of your other, and so having one, it's not just one appointment, it turns into 10 appointments. And then, some of those doctors want to see you twice a year, or they see something, and so they're like, oh, I want to follow up in a month. And so you very quickly get into like doctor's appointments, multiple doctor's appointments every month. It also affects your vision. Intracranial hypertension can lead to papilledema, which can lead to blindness. It can lead to deafness because of the vagus nerve and the cochlear, the area around the ear. The papilledema is a buildup of pressure on the back of the eye, on the optic nerve, and so it's not just an optometrist. It's an ophthalmologist that you must go to once a year. And so there's that. And so there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different specialists. You learn to advocate for your own health care. You learn to manage. I have a binder that I keep all of my medical reports in. One thing that I always encourage people to do when building their binder is anytime that you have any kind of a scan or any radiology, anything like that, is to get a disc of the actual scan itself. So your better specialists are not going to just take the word of a report from another radiologist or another doctor. They actually want to see the pictures for themselves. So rather than have to go back later and get that disc, I just have the disc. I keep the discs. Number one, I'm able to then have the discs for myself. But number two, I can take them to my doctors so that they can see for themselves exactly what it is, because every doctor sees things differently. A radiologist may measure your herniation at 5 millimeters, and then another radiologist read it at 7 millimeters. And really it doesn't matter how many millimeters it is, it's what your flow is. Which leads me to another thing. When you are being diagnosed, many doctors will tell you that, oh, it's only X amount of millimeters, it's not a big deal. If they have not done a cine MRI, which is an MRI with a cine flow study, then there is no way of knowing how bad your herniation is. It's not about the measurement of the herniation, it is about the flow around the herniation. So if you have you can have a 0 millimeter herniation, but you can be completely blocked. And you can have 1 millimeter and be blocked and be extremely symptomatic, or somebody else can have a 20 millimeter herniation, but they still have perfectly good flow and they have no symptoms. So your specialists are not going to operate based on the size of the herniation. They're going to take into consideration the flow and your symptoms. So that is kind of a lot of information. As quick as I could go through it, I do plan on making some more videos more detailed, but that I just wanted to kind of go over what Chiari is as an overview, because there's not a lot of just layman's terms of Chiari. And definitely, if you've made it this far, again, I repeat, check on the Bobby Jones Foundation YouTube channel. There you have a ton of information. There are some excellent Facebook groups for Chiari, Chiari warriors and whatnot, for people who have Chiari, parents of children with Chiari, and loved ones, spouses, support, all that. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like. I plan on putting a lot of different content in here, so there's a lot to me. So anyway, if you have any questions, or if you have Chiari and any information that you would like to share, go ahead and put that in the comments. I would really appreciate that. More importantly, if you know somebody with Chiari, have patience with them and let them know that you care, and just just be there for them, because there's not a lot of that for us. It's just not there. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a blessed day, and thank you so much. Have a great one.